Am I waiting on anything else?
Nope, you have 6 council members, administration's here, mayor's here, and your support staff are here, so you're ready to go.
Okay, excellent. Well, welcome all to the Provo Municipal Council meeting for Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. It is 5:31 p.m. and we are not gathered with an anchor location, but we will be conducting this meeting entirely by electronic means. Mr. Klistraken, our council executive director, would you please explain what it means to not have an anchor location?
Sure. By state code, the chair can authorize that the city council can not use an anchor location to hold their meetings and hold it by electronic means if they provide a statement similar to what I'm about to read to you. On July 6, 2020, in accordance with Utah Code 52-4-207, subsection 4, the council chair, George Hanley, determined that conducting meetings of the municipal council with an anchor location, such as the municipal council chamber, presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. These are the facts upon which Mr. Hanley has made this determination. Utah has been in a declared state of emergency due to COVID-19 since March 6, 2020, a disease outbreak which the World Health Organization has characterized as a pandemic. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention state that COVID-19 is easily spread from person to person between people who are in close contact with one another. The disease spreads through respiratory droplets when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks, and it may be spread by people who are asymptomatic. Federal, state, and local authorities have recommended that individuals limit public gatherings, wear face masks, and follow social distancing guidelines, that individuals exposed to persons experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 self-quarantine for 14 days, and that individuals experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 self-isolate to prevent and control the continuing spread. Notwithstanding that Utah generally, and Utah County specifically, have been moved to low risk or yellow phase, reported COVID-19 cases in Utah County have more than doubled since May 31st, 2020. Physical distance measures will be difficult to set up and maintain in the Provo City Municipal Council Chamber. Additionally, the chair of the governing board of the redevelopment agency of Provo City has determined that its meetings are subject to the same risks and has adopted the same procedures as the municipal council. The meeting will be available to the public for live broadcast and on-demand viewing at youtube.com/Provo City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Strachan. The council requests that attendees help maintain the decorum of the meeting by silencing electronic devices, being respectful to others, and please wait to speak until called upon by the council chair. In the current situation where the meeting is being held via Zoom webinar and broadcast over YouTube, I remind you to turn off your mics when not speaking so as to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast for all to hear. Speaking of the council chair, our council chair, George Hanley, is unavailable to be with us this evening. So I will be chairing the meeting in his absence, and we will begin with a roll call where I will state the names of the councilors present. We have Councilor Dave Shipley, Councilor Bill Fillmore, Councilor Shannon Ellsworth, Councilor Dave Sewell, and Councilor Travis Hoban, and myself, David Harding. And we recognize and acknowledge Mayor Michelle Lucy. Oh, there you are, sorry, I just scanned my screen, as well as our Chief Administrative Officer, Wayne Parker, as well as a whole host of council staff and city staff, without whose assistance we would not be able to pull this meeting off. We will begin with an opening prayer that will be given by Councilor Shipley, and then we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilor Sewell.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this opportunity to meet. We thank Thee for an opportunity to live in a beautiful city and for the opportunities that affords us. We ask a blessing upon us to make wise decisions, to think long-term about what's best and would most benefit the people we're trying to serve here, the residents and citizens of Provo. We ask a blessing upon city leadership, administration, upon the police and the firefighters that are working to serve us and work so hard to make life good for all of us who live here. And we ask a blessing upon them and their families that they can be safe, and we ask a blessing upon us to be, as a city, inclusive and thoughtful and caring and generous to those we live around. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. We will proceed to item 1 on our agenda, which is a presentation to the winner of the Utah League of Cities and Towns essay contest entitled "Why I Like My Community." I'll introduce this and pass the presentation over to Mayor Michelle Kafusi. The Utah League of Cities and Towns held an essay contest on the topic "Why I Like My Community" for 4th and 7th grade students in Utah. One of the winners is from Provo. Typically, the winner is presented with a certificate and a check at the student's school before the summer recess. That was not an option due to COVID-19, so the winner from Provo will instead be announced in this meeting tonight. This is a surprise to the winner, who is about to be brought into the mayor's office but does not know that they've won.
Okay, let's go ahead. Thank you, Council Vice Chair Harding. I'm going to go grab Alana and her mother, Whitney. Oh, okay. Hello, Whitney. I'm Mayor Kafusi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming to the office today.
Yeah.
And are you Alana? Hi, Alana. Hi. I'm Mayor Kafusi. How are you? Good. Thank you for coming to my office today. Do you know why you're here? It's kind of a surprise. Do you like surprises? Good. This is a good surprise. If you wouldn't mind standing right here, Alana, we are excited to announce that you are a winner of your essay that you wrote about Provo. So we're super excited and wanted to present you with a check for $50 and a certificate from the Utah League of Cities and Towns. And then something that's really neat about this award is your school, Provo Elementary, is going to get a check for $500 because of you. Isn't that exciting? So we wanted to, here's your another gift. We're just going to smother you with gifts because we're so proud that our Provo student was a winner. And we also got you a gift bag from the city of Provo and one for you, Whitney.
Nice, awesome, thank you.
Now, I hope this is one of the nice things about being the mayor. Sometimes being the mayor can be a little bit tricky, but because, like, for instance, for managing a pandemic and things like that, but this is one of the positives I get to do as being the mayor, is give something like this to a wonderful student that is in our public school system. So thanks for writing it. And I don't know, Alana, how you feel. Are you okay if I read your essay?
Sure.
So that everybody, all the council members, and by the way, this is a Zoom meeting. I don't know if you've done a Zoom meeting.
I have.
For school, right? You had to Zoom your way out of school.
Yeah.
That's right. So this is our city council, and this is some of the people that are called. There they are waving, so you can wave. They can see you, and our administration, and we're just so proud that Provo had a winner. So I'm gonna actually just step over here and just take my mask off so that the city council can hear what a great essay you wrote, okay? So her title of her essay was entitled, My Wonderful Community. Imagine a fun block party with delicious homemade peach cobbler, hot dogs, and a piñata. The community of Provo comes and they block the road so you can ride your bike or scooter in the street safely. Picture a huge Y printed on the mountains for BYU and a lush and beautiful hiking path to it. And when you get there, there's a beautiful view of Provo and surrounding cities. Did you know that Provo is the oldest city in the county? Also, the parade, which is the 4th of July parade, is the biggest parade in the country. Provo is by far the best city in the world for many reasons. My first reason is the hiking paths. I love the view on the mountain and the gorgeous wildlife. There are numerous trees that cover the mountain, and they are beautiful in fall. I love the wildflowers, the different trees, and the scenery. I love that there are different options for what path to go on. My second reason is the places to go. I love the Bee Museum and all the animals there. There is a liger, giraffes, and even lions. I love the restaurants and that there are so many options to go to. Cafe Rio, Jimmy John's, and Brick Oven. I love all the museums to go to. There are art museums like the Brigham Young Museum of Art. I love the sculptures and cool paintings. When I went there, there was a cool exhibit made entirely of sticks. There are also history museums like the Pioneer Village. I love that you can learn what life was like for the pioneers. My third reason is Provost. I love Principal Dr. O. I love all that he has done for us. He has a wonderful music program with band and orchestra. There is violin for 1st and 2nd and 4th grade and piano for 3rd grade. I also love the Xbox Challenge. I love that if you pass math or reading off, you get to go on a cool free field trip. When we went to a 3D movie. The violin teacher is wonderful. She helps us learn our songs in a fun way. I love my teacher, Mrs. Jones. She makes learning fun and easy, and I love lunch here. I'm guessing it's better than most schools. So when you consider hiking trails, the fun things to do, and the wonderful schools, it should be clear Provo is the best city in the world. That is such a great essay, Alana. Thank you so much for submitting it and representing Provo. We're so proud of you. Want to say anything to our council? I don't blame you. As a 4th grader, I didn't want to say much either.
Well, we would like to tell you congratulations, and that was a wonderful essay and really captures many of the reasons that we on the council also love Provo and why many of the residents in Provo love to be here. And Provo is really great because of the people who live here, and thanks for exemplifying that.
You're welcome. Okay, thanks, Whitney.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alana. All right, thanks, council. I'm going to slip into my office so I can do boards and commissions.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Next up on our agenda is the open public comment. And I will ask Mr. Brian Jones if he would be willing to read the preamble to introduce the open public comment.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Councilor Harding. There are 3 types of items for which public comment will be, oh, that took my screen away. Okay, there we go. There are 3 types of items for which public comment will be received. The first is the open public comment period. The council will allow up to 15 minutes for public comments on matters that do not appear on tonight's agenda. The second is for items that require a public hearing. For these items, time will be provided for all those who wish to speak. The third is for items on the agenda that do not require a public hearing. The council will allow up to 15 minutes for comments on each such item. Because the City Council is meeting virtually using Zoom webinar, and this meeting is being broadcast on the Provo City Council's YouTube channel, we have enabled telephone access to receive public comment, the numbers for which will be shown on screen during the meeting. Callers may have to try multiple numbers to get connected. When a caller is connected, they will be required to enter the meeting ID and enter the hashtag symbol. When asked for a personal ID number, enter pound or hashtag. The caller will now enter the meeting as an attendee and will be able to hear the meeting while muted. If the caller wishes to speak on the item being discussed, they can press *9 to indicate their desire to comment and then wait to be called upon. Callers will be called upon by the last 4 digits of the listed phone number. Please provide your name and city of residence before making your comments. Each caller will be given up to 2 minutes to speak. A timer will be posted on screen and a beep should be audible to the caller when their time is up. A reminder that there is a lag of approximately 30 to 60 seconds between the meeting and the broadcast. To avoid confusion, callers should mute the YouTube or Facebook broadcasts to hear the discussion in real time. The open public comment period starts now.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And if anyone would like to call in, now would be the right time to do it. I don't see anyone in the waiting room at this point, but we will wait another 30 to 60 seconds in case someone is joining now. We are now past 30 seconds and no one has joined as an attendee. Mr. Schrecken, how do you feel about us closing the public comment section?
I think you're fine, and if somebody does, I'll notify you by messenger.
Great, thank you. We will now move to item 2 on our agenda, which is a resolution appointing individuals to various boards and commissions. This will be presented by our mayor, Michelle Capusi. I have not seen her rejoin the meeting since changing rooms. We may need to give her another minute or so.
She may still be talking to, well, here she is. She's about to rejoin here.
So welcome back, Mayor. I have read in item 2, which is a resolution appointing individuals to various boards and commissions. And if you are ready, I'll turn the time over to you to introduce the nominees.
I feel so special. I feel like this is the most I've spoke at a city council day in a long time. So this is really fun for me. So thank you. Before I start, I just want to first say thank you to all the citizens that applied for the board, all the different boards and commissions. That is really rewarding as the mayor, as you start to set your boards and commissions when you have multiple people applying for 1 or 2 positions. It's hard to turn them away, but again, it's really exciting to know that people are anxiously engaged and want to serve the community. And multiple new appointees were stating how they've had this desire to serve in and engage in our local government. And that's just so impressive. And so thank you. It's endless hours and at times it'll be thankless, but it's very appreciated from myself and from the council members. We need your voice and we need your guidance and your feedback. So I'll go ahead and start. We have quite a few. Our first one is Richard Peterson, and Richard is an attorney. I'm just going to read a couple sentences about each one. This is for the Board of Adjustments. Richard Peterson, he's an attorney in Provo and lives in Grandview. He has been excellent in managing controversial meetings, and I'm recommending Richard be appointed to a 5-year term on the Board of Adjustments ending June 30th, 2025. The second for Board of Adjustments is Maria Winden, and Maria has served on the Planning Commission since 2015 and has been involved as a neighborhood chair. And I'm recommending Maria be appointed to the Board of Adjustments ending June 30th, 2022. The Civil Service Commission, we have one, Jim Tracy, who many of you may know. Jim is the former sheriff of Utah County, and he was the sheriff for almost 16 years and was twice named Utah Sheriff of the Year by the Utah Association of Counties. And I'm recommending Jim be reappointed to a 6-year term on the Civil Service Commission ending June 30th, 2026. The next committee is our Design Review Committee, and I have Cole Houghton, and Cole has experience designing a home in a historical neighborhood where he learned the history of the neighborhood and its architecture and presented it to a board for approval. He currently works as an architectural designer, and I'm recommending Cole be appointed to the Design Review Committee ending June 30th, 2024. Also on the Design Review Committee is James Hall. James received a bachelor's and master's of architecture from the University of Utah and worked as an architectural intern for 2 years at Atlas Architects. I am recommending James be appointed to the Design Review Committee ending June 30th, 2024. The next commission is the Landmarks Commission. Matthew Christensen. Matthew has been a member of the Landmarks Commission since 2012. He has worked in higher education development for a short term at UVU and for over a decade at LDS Philanthropies. I am recommending Matthew be reappointed to the Landmarks Commission ending June 30th, 2024. The Library Board, Megan Pechtel. Megan owns several businesses in Provo and has served on multiple PTAs and has been a strong participator in the Provo Library's activities. I am recommending Megan be appointed to the Library Board ending June 30th, 2023. The Parks and Recreation Board, Jen Peterson. Jen is an entrepreneur in various business endeavors. She is a frequent participant on our trail systems and an advocate for Rock Canyon. I'm recommending Jen be reappointed to a 3-year term on the Parks and Recreation Board ending June 30th, 2023. Tom Sataki. Tom has a lifetime history associated with Provo Parks and Recreation. He was instrumental in the genesis of rugby in Provo and was involved with the development of its first rugby field. I am recommending Tom be reappointed to a 3-year term on the Parks and Recreation Board ending June 30th, 2023. Planning Commission, Lisa Jensen. Lisa used to work in the Community Development Department. Lisa has also served as a PTA president and in various positions on community councils. I am recommending Lisa be reappointed to a 3-year term on the Planning Commission ending June 30th, 2023. Daniel Gonzalez. Daniel graduated from Cornell University with a degree in Urban and Regional Studies. Daniel is also a graduate of BYU Law School, and I'm recommending Daniel be appointed to the Planning Commission ending June 30th, 2023. And Brian Henry. Brian is a private land planner who is passionate about creating vibrant cities. His profession requires him to understand city codes for the different projects he designs. I'm recommending Brian be appointed to the Planning Commission ending June 30th, 2022. And that is the most recent that have come out of my office.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And Ms. Salzal, do we have the resolution? Excellent. Thank you. Can we scroll through that slowly? Great, thank you for that, Hannah. And I believe some of these are reappointments and some of these are new appointments. Have we had the opportunity to meet with all of the new appointments that are on this resolution? I don't know if I'm asking. Yeah.
Yes, Dave Harding, this is Elizabeth. All of the new appointments who are listed on this resolution were present tonight, and everyone else on this particular resolution was being reappointed.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Vanderwerfen. Appreciate that. All right. We have before us an implied motion to approve this resolution. Is there any discussion on the implied motion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. Let's start with Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor Sewell.
Yes.
Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
Councillor Harding will also vote yes. Councillor Ellsworth
Yes.
and Councillor Fillmore.
Yes.
Great. That passes unanimously with our Council Chair Handley excused. And that brings us to our final item on tonight's agenda, an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 1.92 acres of real property, generally located at 442 and 490 South State Street, from general commercial to high density residential, and authorizing a related development agreement. This will be presented by Provo City Planner Dustin Wright.
Thank you. So this item is a rezone application that has previously been approved by the City Council. Last year that was brought before the council and it was approved with a development agreement. The development agreement that was part of that limited the number of units that would be permitted in the zone or on this parcel, the height of the different buildings on the property. And so that process was done last year. The applicant has been working towards getting everything in place for this rezone. One thing that staff wasn't aware of, nor was the applicant, was that the development agreement that was approved by the council for this rezone was to be signed within a year, due to the fact that there were a few things that needed to take place prior to that document getting signed, such as a plat being recorded and a bond being paid for the project. That application never got signed. And so, or the development agreement, sorry, never got signed. And then recently it's come to our attention that there was that year deadline that it needed to take place within. So talking with the council attorney, this item needed to come back to the council to get reapproved so that development agreement could then now be signed again. And so that's kind of what we're doing now. We've brought it back to the council to get that this rezone reapproved for the applicant. The applicant has gone through quite a bit to get to this point, with going through that approval previously, then working on getting all that financing in place to be able to move forward on this large project. Obviously, the corona virus has probably played part in slowing some of that down and making that more challenging, as well as some other things. And so the applicant can speak to some of those items that they've kind of been going through. But over the past year, staff's been in contact with the applicant and finding out kind of where things are in the process, if we're ready to get that plat recorded, get that development agreement signed and things like that. And so there has been that lack of information as far as knowing that year period was something that needed to be done. And so moving forward in the future, staff's been working with the council office to be able to come up with some ideas to make sure that we don't run into this situation again. And that would be making that notification to the applicant a little more apparent so that they know up front that they need to get that taken care of within a year. And also maybe putting some reminders on our software system to remind us to reach out to them and find out where things are and if they're on target to get that completed so that we don't run into this technicality again in the future. And yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at this point with this one. If there's questions about the site or anything else, I'd be happy to answer those questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wright. So now it's an opportunity for us to ask any questions of development services, and then we will move to open or public comment for this item. So any questions for Mr. Wright? Okay, perhaps it should be mentioned publicly that we did discuss this item in an earlier work meeting where we had a number of questions answered. So it's like you did a great job answering all that. So at this point, we will open the item for public comment. We will hold off for 30 seconds or so to see if anyone is calling in. Mr. Wright, do you know, I do see that we have one attendee, I believe he's the applicant. Do you know if he wants to speak during the 2-minute public comment, or is he just here to answer questions?
Yeah, I believe he's available for any questions or that you might have for him.
Okay. I believe that he's just been added to the panelists. Mr. Kuhn, if while we're waiting to see if anyone from the public calls in, you're welcome to take the 2 minutes, like anyone from the public, if you'd like to speak to this. Otherwise, we appreciate you being here to answer questions.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Harding. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Okay,
and I apologize because I can probably tell there's a little waver in my voice and my heart is beating profusely, as you can imagine. I think the thing that I want to point out more than anything else in this situation is that I'm not looking for exoneration for not understanding that I only had a year to get the development agreement signed, but I do want it noted that I had no idea, staff wasn't aware of us, none of us was aware of that. And I also would like to make sure that everybody understands that Dustin and I were communicating, I'd say at least every 3 to 4 months on different things that I was going through with this particular project. And I'd like to kind of point out some of the things that I've been doing because I have not been sitting on my hands. That's one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody understands. I've actively been working on and pursuing getting this project constructed. So we received approval at the end of May. By the end of June, I had submitted, made sure that we had submitted for our building permits. As you can imagine, submitting a full set of engineering and architectural drawings and plans, at that point, we had spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on not just getting this approved, but also being able to submit a full set of plans. And then through July, August, even into September, we had some red lines that we were addressing. Anyone who is familiar with the site knows that it housed a residence and also an old nursery building. So during the end of the summer months, after we addressed the majority of the red lines, I had started working on the demolition process. So I went through the entire demolition process with both the city and the state, and we made sure that both the residents and the building got demoed. And then, and that happened by by November, all of that took place. And at the same time, I was working with the city on getting all of the kills in place, cutting off the gas, cutting off the water, the gas, the power. The gas and the power. And then we started working on the sewer and the water, but because State Street is a UDOT road, we were informed that UDOT wouldn't allow us to make any cuts until the middle of April. And so I had to go through the trespassing permit process with UDOT, but I couldn't do that until April. And so from there, this whole time I was working on getting the construction bids in place. And so we made it through all of that process, I want to say by about the end to middle of, or the end of January, first part, middle of February, and settled on working with Miller Construction and entered into an agreement with them. They're the same group that's building 400 Element in Provo. And then I was working on, we were getting close to working through all of the financing processes and issues. And then when COVID hit, majority of the institutions that we were working with basically tapped their brakes and said, hey, we need to kind of see where everything's going here. And so we kind of worked through that process for the next, I would say, probably 2 to 3 months. And that kind of puts us right where we are today. I'm currently working with, I wanted to point out a couple of things. Oh, I also forgot. Also about the February, March timeframe, we were working with Jonathan Salione to move the power. There's a power pole on the north, kind of the north central part of the property. But in meeting with him, then we were also informed that it had more than just power. It had telephone, it had fiber, internet, that kind of a thing. And so then we had to go and work with all of the separate entities. That took almost 6 to 8 weeks to work with all of the different entities to get agreements for us to move those lines and basically bury them and then reroute them. So we worked on that process as well.
So, Mr. Kuhn?
Yeah.
Right now we're in public comment, so we have a time limit. So let me cut you off.
I'm sorry.
There. You're fine. Stay on the line, and we will. There may be questions that we'll ask you to answer in just a little bit. All right. I do not see any other anyone else that's wishing to make a public comment. So we will close the public comment and bring this back to the council. So council members, are there any questions you want to ask of the applicant or any discussion of the implied motion? And I guess at this point, let me ask Mr. Kuhn if you would briefly finish your synopsis of what has taken place since the council approved this 14 months ago. Mr. Kuhn, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I think I had almost gotten to the end of it, just worked with Jonathan Salione. I'd forgotten to mention that part. And so that's basically brought us to this point. I'm right now I've gone through credit committee with Bank of Utah. They've given it a very positive review. I'm hoping to see a term sheet from them. They indicated they were very interested in moving forward. I am working with Aubrey Matthews with ARC funding, and we're working with a couple of credit unions as well, just as a backup plan. And then I'm also working with Bedford Lending. They approached me on this project, actually. They're HUD, they specialize in HUD financing. HUD financing generally takes a little bit longer for those that aren't familiar with it. But they've reviewed the project and are very, very confident that, worst case scenario, we can get this approved through HUD financing. So, the part where I guess I'm just sick about is I just had no idea. I had no idea that that there was this year deadline. And like I said, I really haven't just been sitting on my hands. This is something, you know, this is more than an investment property for us. This is a construction project. I've since we got approved, I guess that's part of why my heart is so sick, is that I brought in investors, spent lots and lots of money because I had been approved, and I thought we were, you know, getting close to getting across the finish line. So I just had no idea. Dustin and I, like I said, we talked about every 3 or 4 months on different issues along the way, whether it was the demolition process or the kill process. I can't even remember what the last one was that we were talking about. But anyway, like I said, we were talking about every 3 or 4 months, and that never came up. Neither one of us were aware of it. And so I think Dustin reached out to me, if I remember, it was the end of June, and just said, hey, we missed this deadline. It expired at the end of May. So we're going to have to put you back on and go through and get rezoned. So anyway, more than anything, I would kind of plead for your leniency on this. It wasn't intentional on my part. And lots of effort, time, money has gone into this. And I feel like we're right there at the finish line. So I would say those are the primary things I'd like to point out.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. And Councilor Ellsworth.
Yeah, when this was presented, and I saw it 2.5 years ago, it was presented as specifically for married student housing. Is that still the case?
Yes, it's still family housing. Yeah. Did you say single or married? You said married.
Married student housing is what the document said. Multiple documents said married student housing. Is that still the case?
Yeah, the focus is married student housing. Yes. In fact, we've also entered into an agreement with Redstone Residential, and their primary focus is, you know, student housing. And so the thought was that they could help those that are getting married, that are going to BYU, UVU, and provide a potential solution for them, a place to live. So the answer is yes. But at the same time, I would point out that, you know, we don't limit student housing. We would be thrilled if it was longer term residents. There's nothing that I mean, we can't discriminate whether or not somebody's a student or a non-student. So it will be married housing.
And is the whole thing rentals? None of them are for sale?
The project is a rental. I mean, it's approved as an apartment, not as condos, but generally what we found, I'm also a partner in, or was a partner in, and still have units in Alpine Village. And that is a condo project, but the majority of those are also rental units.
Well, tell me, yeah, so it won't be condominiumized, or there will be one owner who manages it as a apartment complex?
Yeah, it's not just one owner, but it will be investors that come in. If somebody wanted to invest in the entity to kind of have their ownership that way in a unit, they certainly could.
But you wouldn't sell off like 1 or 2 units to an investor in California, and it's going to be under like one holding group. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's under one holding group controlled by one holding group. So you don't have to worry about seeing a bunch of for sale signs, or, you know, if somebody's doing the upkeep on one unit versus not another unit, or things along those lines.
Thanks. That was my questions.
You bet. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have any more questions, but I do have some comments I want to present to the council.
Go ahead.
Hannah, can you pull up that PowerPoint I sent you? And do you want me to advance it, or do you want to? Maybe we'll let Hannah advance it.
You have control now.
Okay. Yeah, so I just have some concerns about the project. I have some concerns about the State Street corridor in my district, and I have some concerns about all of South Provo. And I just wanted to walk you through some of these so you can understand where I'm coming from, and so you just get a feel for the concerns that I have in my part of Provo, in the place where I live, in the part of the community where I spend the most time. So let's see if this will advance. How do I, let's try this. Okay, so some of my concerns with this project, I think it's a good project, but it's the wrong location. It's all rentals, so it's not really entry-level housing. It's not something that someone could buy and invest in this area. So it's just purely student housing. And it's married student housing. It's not near campus. It's blocks and blocks south of campus. So everyone who wants to get to campus will probably have to drive to campus. And yeah, I'd love to see married student housing next to campus, like where the old UCCU building is, where they're building married student housing. That's great. That's right by campus. Or another great place for married student housing would be where the old Provo High is, right? It has a proximity to the central location that people need to access. The livability in this area it's pretty poor. It's adjacent to a highway with speeds of 60 miles per hour, which is really typical. And that's UDOT's road. They have jurisdiction over State Street, and they're controlling the access. So they've limited ingresses and egresses because they want high speeds. They want to move cars. There's no grocery stores in the area. I mentioned this earlier. Most folks around here go to Springville to buy groceries. The closest grocery store isn't much of a grocery store, right? It's Sam's Club. Not a lot of people, I think, have a membership to Sam's Club, and you have to really wind your way through town to find one of our grocery stores in Provo. And then the LED signage, I mentioned that in our last meeting. I'm concerned about LED signage in this area, especially next to all these homes. So it's just not a livable area. It's just not a great place to settle down and walk around and enjoy your neighbors because of these barriers. Additionally, we've seen a pattern of commercial zones being changed to residential zones. And that's not just a concern in South Provo, that's a concern all over. I think we ought to understand that pattern and what it means for Provo years from now. What are the tax implications for Provo, the economic implications? Will we all just be okay going to Orem and Spanish Fork to shop in the future? Another concern is that the neighborhood chair brought this up 2.5 years ago when it was at the Planning Commission meeting, and she said that the Maeser neighborhood currently has mostly 1 and 2 bedroom homes or units. She was concerned that people in Maeser, when they have growing families, they don't have a place to move to in the Maeser neighborhood. And I sympathize. People would like to stay in that kind of area, but there's not housing for them to upgrade to or move up into. Additional concerns I have with the project include poor active transportation infrastructure. Again, it's right on State Street, and if there's any little kids living there that have to get to Provost Elementary, they have to cross that highway. We might have to consider putting in one of those underpasses like they have at, is it Timpanogos Elementary on 5th West, so that kids can cross safely. There's poor transit access. Folks thought that this was close to UVX. It's not. UVX doesn't come to this part of town. You would have to walk down like 4th South or 3rd South and get to the UVX stop on University. So that's at least a mile. So there's really not great transit access here. And then vehicular transportation constraints. It reduces State Street to, there was a traffic study done on this one, which there isn't always, but it reduces the State Street level of service from A to B, which is significant. There's poor east and west connectivity in this part of town. So it's pretty hard to get from, let's say, the cemetery over to the mall, right? It's just, there's not great connectivity east and west. And a lot of that has to do with the rail lines that we have. And then folks who live here, let's assume some married students live here at this project and they want to go to BYU or UVU, they've got to go north. And to go north, they're going to have to come out on State Street and turn left. So imagine 8 a.m. every morning, there's just going to be this huge queue of cars trying to turn left into 50-mile-an-hour traffic. It's kind of a nightmare, honestly. I think that's going to be rough. So just some broader context, well, let's go back. On the corridor, 715 units are approved or are under construction on the State Street corridor between 300 South and 1860 South. So that's between the Maverick and the 7-Eleven. So if you drove down there now, you wouldn't see them because many of them are being built and some of them are still just in the preliminary phases, but they've been approved. And those are just multifamily units. So we have an influx, a huge influx of multifamily units, but the area is already saturated with that kind of housing. And I'm just concerned that we are concentrating one type of housing, multifamily housing, specifically townhomes and apartments in this area. It's not doing much to improve housing diversity. People who want to stay here don't have a place to move up to. So the housing types I wrote out here, the townhomes that are approved right now on South State Street, there's 235 townhomes and 480 apartments. And then the housing quality is fairly low. A lot of the single family homes in the area are pretty old. And if you look at the data, I think it says most of the homes, I want to say 60% or more in this area were built between 1940 and 1970. So they're pretty dated. And that's the single family homes. And then the commercial feeling corridor, right? How are we going to manage commercial uses in this area? What are we going to do about signs and about speeds? So we'd have to take one, I mean, the signs is something that the council can control, but speeds is something we'd have to put a lot of pressure on UDOT, get them to install traffic lights and really bring down those speeds so that this is a safe place for people to walk to school, to walk to the park, and wherever else they're going. I mean, they can't walk to the grocery store, but. And then my concerns generally for South Provo is the economic segregation. I really think that North Provo is the haves and South Provo is the have-nots. People want to move into that zip code north of me. And, there's better schools up there and seemingly better neighborhoods, depending on how you define that. And it seems like there's just been this trend to put a lot of entry-level housing, a ton of multifamily, and a lot of social services in South Provo, but there's not a grocery store south of Center Street. So the consolidated social services are, primarily in Provo for the county, and they're primarily in my district. The State Mental Hospital, Wasatch Mental Health is in my district, Community Action, South Franklin Center, the Boulders. There's more crime here than in Northern Provo, according to one of our police officers. And then just generally the consolidated homogeneous housing types. So 2,000 multifamily units are approved or under construction in my district. And if the mall redevelops, there would be even more. So those are my concerns generally. This is a spreadsheet I made with some of the totals. You can see the total units that have been, these are all multifamily units that have been approved in Provo or are under construction. So total in the city, there's 4,300 and 2,800 are in District 3. So we're not spreading out this housing type, we're really consolidating them. And I think this is a critical housing type. I think it's needed, but we also need it in northern parts of Provo and out in West Provo. And we want people to enjoy their neighborhoods and be able to move into different housing types as their life cycle changes, as their stage in life changes. Then there's this map, and this shows you where some of these are being built. And I'm happy to email this to you. And then this is this apartment up here, right? But my biggest question is, if this area is going to be residential, what kind of quality of life are we going to provide for citizens in my district? How will we slow speeds? How will we bring them out of a food desert? How will we bring in people of higher socioeconomic profiles who can invest in this area and bring different resources to the disadvantaged communities that live here? Those are my concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Ellsworth. Any additional council discussion on this item? Mr. Hoban.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Mrs. Ellsworth for a very well thought out presentation. And I don't agree with everything, but I do agree with the thought process of thinking through some of these developments more and planning for the future. You know, specifically in regards to this development, you know, whether or not this moves forward, I think she brought up some really good points that are worth all of us thinking through in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoban.
Vice Chairman Harding?
Yes, Mr. Kuhn.
Yeah, I don't know if, am I allowed to make any additional comments or not? There were a couple of things that I totally appreciate what Mrs. Ellsworth was saying, but one thing for sure is that.
Hang on, Mr. Kuhn. We will need to have, you'll need to have a counselor ask you to respond if that's.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. You're doing fine. You're fine.
I'm happy to hear Mr. Kuhn's feedback.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Coons, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ms. Ellsworth. I appreciate that. One of the main things is that this particular area in Provo, the speed limit's actually 35. There's no 60-mile-an-hour zone. It slows way down to 35 miles per hour. Additionally, when I was working through this process, I had to, well, I didn't have to have, but I chose to have several meetings with the, not just the neighborhood, but then the neighborhood chair and the vice chair. The neighborhood chair was actually relatively supportive. The vice chair was more concerned. And that fostered a lot of the changes that we brought forth in this particular development. So one of the things that we agreed to do was limit the tallest building to 44 feet, which is generally the size of something that's going to be no more than a 3-story building. When it was zoned commercial, we actually had no limitation to the height of the building. And so we suggested that we self-impose and on the tallest building only have 44 feet. And then we listened to their feedback and suggestions and actually dropped the second building down to a 3-story building. And they really wanted to avoid having, I know that you pointed putting traffic onto State Street, but I want you to know, based on the traffic studies that were done and the conversations that we had with UDOT, UDOT is not concerned about the amount of traffic that a 60-unit project is going to put on State Street, because we had to go through that process actually with them. But we also agreed to, when we dropped the 4-story building to a 3-story building, we agreed to then create the townhomes on 5th South, so that so we eliminated one of the egresses off of 500 South onto State Street because of the direction that we, and the request that we received from the neighborhood. And then we agreed to put up as a visual barrier and to make it feel more part of that community that you were talking about, was those nicer units on the front, which, and I know that this doesn't really play a part in it, obviously for you guys, but for a developer, that obviously, you know, cost us a lot more to say, yeah, we'll do that, to try to be good neighbors and to try to create a visual barrier so it just feels like it's part of the neighborhood and you're not looking at a big parking lot. So I do want you to know that I feel like we really went out of our way to try to, you know, get the input and the feedback of the neighborhood and took a lot of their thoughts and their suggestions and tried to meld it into this particular development so that it's something that would fit nicely. And as you guys discussed this afternoon, the right to the east of us is 2 more apartment complexes. So this actually feels like, and then just to the west of us, there's actually quite a few fourplexes and townhomes that are rentals as well. So it actually felt like a neighborhood that already kind of fit this particular model. And I know that you guys are aware of this, but obviously in order to attract more commercial related activity, there's a reason why Allen's went out of business. And you've got to get some door tops. You've got to get some doors. Some rooftops or some doors to drive that activity. So I'm really proud of how this project looks and the type of individual families that it will attract. So anyway, those are just some of the things that I wanted to point out. And I certainly appreciate your concerns. I think that you have to be very careful as you look at the different housing types, and it can't be so singular in focus. So I do appreciate the balancing act that you have, and I appreciate your concerns. But I wanted you at least know some of them, while very well founded, have already been kind of thought through and addressed. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And sorry I'm rambling. I'm nervous. I can tell I'm rambling.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Coons really brings up some good points. Would we get a grocery store if 64 units came to South Provo? That's not going to be the differentiator. We already have 700 coming on South State Street and then 2,000 coming to my district. So this isn't going to be the determining factor. I am seriously concerned that these are all for rent. It's not going to bring, long-term neighborliness to this part of town. And it's not anywhere near any school. It's not by BYU. It's not by UVU. So I really appreciate the concessions that have been made. I rewatched the Planning Commission meeting from 2.5 years ago where the citizens spoke. They were really concerned about the height, even though the developer made some generous concessions to change heights and reconfigure. I think it's the wrong location. I think it should be by BYU. And I think people in this area should have a greater diversity of housing types. I think they deserve that opportunity to find housing in their area that they can move up to.
Mr. Hoban, I don't believe I lowered your hand after you had your last comment, but it's up. Do you have another comment you wanted to make?
Oh, I'm sure I could always find something else to say, but no.
Okay.
Thanks, though.
Thank you. All right. We currently have an implied motion to reapprove this rezone and reauthorize the signing of the development agreement. Is there any more discussion on it? Mr. Shipley.
Yeah, I guess I'm persuaded that we need to reconsider how we're developing in South Provo. I think Ms. Ellsworth's been very persuasive in that regard. Something I'm struggling with this particular project is having not been on the council before this year and feeling significantly torn about the fact that a prior council and planning commission approved this and a developer went forward with that approval, and now we're potentially stripping that away from someone at this point, at this stage of the game. And so I guess I would appreciate some feedback from some council members who were on, the council last year, their thoughts about this project and their thoughts about how we're messaging as a council if we strip away something that we approved prior.
Thank you, Mr. Shipley. Mr. Sewell, do you have a response to that? Or I guess, whatever. And you're on mute.
Thank you. So it seemed like a good idea when we approved it. I still feel like there's good reasons for going ahead, but like Mr. Shipley said, I did find Councillor Ellsworth's arguments persuasive on the need to look at things a little differently as far as housing types. For me personally, I could not in good conscience vote against this at this very late hour, where the developer didn't even know about the deadline. Our staff didn't know about the deadline, and it's sort of like a gotcha, I think, to have come this far and invested so much. So for me personally, I can't even really in good conscience even consider voting no on it at this point.
I was also, I guess without Mr. Handley here, I'm the other one that was on the council. I'll say that this item, this this property came before the council, 3 or 4 times, possibly more. A lot of different iterations, a lot of public feedback, a lot of compromises were made. And not just like, well, we want 5 and you want 3, so we'll do 4, but reworking of the project to make it fit in. I definitely support if we want to revisit the area plan for this area. I think it'd be good to take a look at what does this area look like after. Now I'm getting into my own thoughts here, but as far as the approval last year, it felt like, I believe it was, well, I can't remember, but the council did approve it, and I feel that given the immediate location where it's at, that I supported it at the time, and I still support it. So I hope that answers your question. And then I believe Mr. Sewell had his hand up next, and then after that, Mr. Fillmore.
I already made my comment.
I apologize. All right, Mr. Fillmore.
Just a couple of general observations. I find it very problematic at the 11th hour for considering denying this developer what he thought he had approval for a year ago. This doesn't feel right to me. Secondly, I really appreciate Shannon's articulate expressions on her concerns for her district. And I'm all in favor of doing whatever we can on a reasonable basis to beautify and enhance the State Street corridor. What I can't figure out is if we have a crying need for affordable housing, on the one hand, and we've got this vacant lot there, and I don't know what else we do with it. The argument seems to be made that there's not enough rooftops to justify a commercial development there, and yet we're debating whether or not to put some housing there, which would definitely be an enhancement to State Street, better than the vacant lot that it is now. Just kind of scratching my head. If we deny this project, what happens to this parcel? It's not suitable for commercial. It's not suitable for residential. So then what? So my inclination is to reapprove this project. It was approved over a year ago, and but also work with Shannon and everyone else that wants to look for ways to make the State Street corridor more viable. That we do some beautification efforts to enhance the southern entrance to the city. That we look for ways to get the diversity of residential and commercial on State Street. But I just don't think we need to sacrifice this project to that end.
Ms. Ellsworth.
Yes, I appreciate Mr. Fillmore's sentiments. I think that this this argument that we sometimes make, like when we were in an RDA meeting, someone was talking to us about a downtown property that had lots of weeds, and they said it'll be a huge improvement over all these weeds. And then some other developer says, oh, well, we'll turn this into residential. It'll be a huge improvement over these weeds. It's like, honestly, anything would be an improvement over those weeds. Cleaning it up with a landscaping crew once a year would be an improvement over those weeds. So I don't think that's necessarily like a driving factor for me, but I would be interested in this trend of changing commercial zoning to residential zoning. And maybe that's something we can ask staff to investigate. How many times has that happened in the last 2 years? And we're just taking the developer's word for it that commercial will not work there. It has to be residential. And I bet most of them are people of integrity, but I also know that residential just yields a higher profit for a developer. And I think we ought to understand the difference between those two land uses and the opportunity costs. And no doubt affordable housing is important. We're going to see 2,000 multifamily units in my district in the next couple of years. We'll probably have to redistrict, and I won't have all of my district anymore. But I think we really should evaluate that pattern of listening to developers and really giving them residential every time they want to flip it from commercial. We saw the same thing at the Mix. That's a really important gateway in our community. There's some great commercial property there, but the developers came and said, hey, no, we need this to be residential. Same thing is happening on South State Street. It's just going to keep happening. And residential, again, it's critical. I'm not a NIMBY. I live in the densest housing of any of us. I just think that we ought to be a lot more conscientious about the patterns that we're creating and the development that we're allowing for the next 100 years. So I appreciate all of your input. I hope you'll keep working with me on this. I still don't think student housing is right for this part of town.
Okay. I because I'm hosting the meeting, I can't raise my hand digitally like the rest of you, but I definitely agree that we need to have a discussion, an analysis on commercial and what's viable. I attend the downtown Provo the DPI meetings, and there's a lot of concern that behaviors have changed with the pandemic, and things may not ever return to how it was before. And even on Center Street, Provo, people are talking more and more about the need of residential in these projects. So I agree that we definitely need to have an analysis and really carefully look at commercial, residential, and the best way forward. Any other comments before we vote on the implied motion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote on the implied motion, and we will start with Councillor Sewell.
Yes.
And Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
I, David Harding, will also vote yes. Councillor Ellsworth.
No.
Councillor Fillmore.
Yes.
And Councillor Hoban.
Well, it looks like my vote doesn't really matter, but I guess I'll say yes, but I think it's because at this point it would be hard to go back on this decision, having, you know, this developer having invested so much. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of validity to what Mrs. Ellsworth said. Sorry, I should have said that before voting. So we'll say yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hoban. With that, the motion passes 5-1 with Councillor Ellsworth voting against it and Mr. Handley, Chair Handley, excused. And unless there is an objection, we will now adjourn our Provo Municipal Council meeting by unanimous consent.
Can I just say thank you so much? This was an awful experience, but thank you so much, and I very much appreciate where you're coming from, Mrs. Ellsworth. But thank you so much. I can sleep tonight, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn, and take care, all.